I was kneeling on the hardwood floor of my dead sister's apartment, surrounded by cardboard boxes and the lingering scent of her jasmine perfume, when I found the diary that would destroy everything I thought I knew about my life. It was hidden beneath a loose floorboard in her closet, wrapped in a silk scarf I'd given her for her 23rd birthday. The same birthday we'd celebrated together because we were twins. Identical twins who had shared everything: a face, a childhood, a soul. 6 months had passed since Emma's car went off the bridge on Route 9. 6 months since I'd identified her body. 6 months since I'd become an only child, a half of a whole, a mirror with nothing to reflect. But nothing prepared me for the 5 words written in her handwriting on the last page of that diary. Dated the morning she died. Claire doesn't know she's adopted. My name is Claire. Before we go further into this story that shattered my entire existence, I need to ask you something. Have you ever discovered a truth that made you question everything you thought you knew about yourself? Share your experience in the comments below, and please subscribe for more stories about the secrets families keep and the identities we think belong to us. Now let me take you back to the beginning, to the day I stopped being me. My name is Claire Morrison, or at least that's what I believed for 24 years. I grew up in Ashford, Connecticut, in a white colonial house with blue shutters and a tire swing in the backyard. My parents, David and Sharon Morrison, were the kind of people who packed homemade lunches and never missed a school play. Dad taught history at the local high school. Mom worked part-time as a librarian. And then there was Emma, my twin, my other half, the person who knew me better than I knew myself. We were identical in every way that mattered. Same honey blonde hair that turned gold in summer. Same gray-green eyes that looked blue when we cried. Same constellation of freckles across our noses. People couldn't tell us apart, and we loved it. We'd switch classes in high school, finish each other's sentences, wake up in the middle of the night knowing the other was having a nightmare. That's what twins do. That's what we were. Or so I thought. Emma and I had both gone to the University of Connecticut, though we'd chosen different paths. She studied architecture. I studied elementary education. We got an apartment together off campus during our junior year, a tiny 2-bedroom with a kitchen the size of a closet and windows that looked out over the town square. After graduation, Emma got a job at a prestigious firm in Hartford. I became a 3rd-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary. We talked every single day. We still finished each other's sentences. We still knew when the other was sad without being told. And then, on a rainy Tuesday in March, Emma's car hydroplaned on Route 9 and went through the guardrail into the Farmington River. They said she died on impact. They said she didn't suffer. They said a lot of things that were supposed to make it easier, but nothing made it easier. Nothing could fill the hole where half of me used to be. The funeral was a blur of flowers and faces and hands squeezing mine with sympathetic pressure. Mom cried so hard she couldn't stand. Dad held her up, his face gray and ancient. I stood between them, feeling like I was underwater, like I was the one who had drowned. For 6 months, I moved through life like a ghost. I took a leave of absence from teaching. I stayed in my apartment and avoided mirrors because seeing my face meant seeing hers. I wore her clothes sometimes just to feel close to her. I read our old text messages until my eyes burned. And then Mom asked me to clean out Emma's apartment. "I can't do it, sweetheart," she'd said over the phone, her voice threadbare. "I've tried 3 times and I can't get past the front door. Could you possibly?" "I'll do it," I'd said, because what else could I say? Because someone had to box up the life my sister had left behind. That's how I ended up on that floor 6 months after Emma died, holding a diary I didn't know she kept. I'd been sorting through her closet, folding the dresses she'd never wear again, when I noticed the floorboard was slightly raised. At first, I thought it was just old building settling, but something made me press on it. It gave way easily, revealing a small, hollow space beneath. Inside was the diary, wrapped in my scarf. My hands shook as I unwrapped it. The journal was leather-bound, expensive, the kind Emma always loved. I opened it to the first page, dated 3 years earlier, January 15th. I don't know if I'll ever have the courage to tell Claire the truth. Mom and Dad made me promise I wouldn't, and I understand why. But every time I look at her, every time she calls me her twin, her other half, I feel like I'm living a lie. Because she's not my twin. She's my cousin. And she doesn't even know she's adopted. The words swam before my eyes. I read them again. And again. They didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. I flipped through the pages frantically, looking for more. Most entries were normal. Plans for work projects. Thoughts about a guy she was dating. Complaints about traffic. But scattered throughout were entries about me. About the secret. March 3rd. Claire asked me today why we have different blood types. I told her it's rare but possible for identical twins. The lie came so easily. I hate myself for it. July 22nd. We went through old photo albums at Mom and Dad's. Claire laughed at pictures of us as babies, pointing out how you can't tell us apart. But I can tell. I know which baby is me and which is her. Because I remember when she came to live with us. I was 2 years old enough to remember, even if the memories are hazy now. October 10th. I found some old documents in the attic when I was helping Dad. Adoption papers with Claire's original name on them. Isabelle Catherine. She was born Isabelle Catherine Bennett, daughter of Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Thomas. The aunt and uncle we were told died in a car accident when we were babies, except only they died. Their daughter survived. Their daughter became my sister. Became Claire. I couldn't breathe. The room was spinning, tilting sideways like Emma's car must have tilted when it went through the guardrail. I kept reading, my tears falling onto the pages and smudging her careful handwriting. December 1st. Claire got accepted to UConn today. She was so happy, spinning around the kitchen, talking about how we'd be together, how we'd never be apart. I smiled and hugged her and felt like the worst person in the world, because I know something she doesn't. I know that the reason we look identical isn't because we shared a womb. It's because her mother and my mother were identical twins, Rebecca and Sharon, twin sisters who looked exactly the same, who passed those same genes down to their daughters. Claire isn't my twin. She's my double cousin, raised as my twin sister, and she has no idea. The diary fell from my hands. I pressed my palms against my eyes, trying to stop the tears, trying to stop the world from fracturing into 1,000 pieces. It couldn't be true. It was insane. My parents would have told me. Emma would have told me. But Emma had wanted to tell me. That's what the diary said. She'd wanted to tell me, but promised she wouldn't. I picked up the journal again with trembling fingers and turned to the last entry. The one dated the morning Emma died. March 12th. I can't keep this secret anymore. It's eating me alive. Claire deserves to know who she really is, where she really came from. Mom and Dad made me promise when I was 16 and old enough to understand, but that promise is killing me. It's killing my relationship with Claire because there's this wall between us made of lies, and she doesn't even know it exists. I'm going to tell her, tonight. I'm going to tell her everything. I'm going to give her this diary and let her read it, and then I'm going to take her to Mom and Dad's, and we're all going to sit down and finally tell the truth. I'm terrified, but I love her too much to keep lying. She deserves to know that she's Isabelle. She deserves to know about Rebecca and Thomas. She deserves to know her own story. The entry ended there. That was the morning Emma died. The morning she decided to tell me everything. I sat on that floor for hours, reading and rereading those entries until I had them memorized, until the words had burned themselves into my brain. I wasn't Claire Morrison. I was Isabelle Bennett. My parents weren't my parents. They were my aunt and uncle. Emma wasn't my twin. She was my cousin. And the woman I'd called Mom my whole life was actually my mother's identical twin sister. Everything I knew about myself was a lie. When I finally stood up, my legs were numb and the sun had set. Emma's apartment was dark except for the streetlight coming through the window. I gathered the diary, holding it against my chest like it was the only real thing left in the world. Then I drove to my parents' house. It was past 9 when I pulled into the driveway of the white colonial with blue shutters, the house where I'd grown up, the house that suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else's childhood. Mom answered the door in her bathrobe, her face lighting up when she saw me before falling when she saw my expression. "Claire, sweetie, what's wrong? You look—" "Is my name really Isabelle?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. All the color drained from her face. She gripped the door frame. "What? What are you talking about?" "I found Emma's diary." I held it up. "I know, Mom. I know I'm adopted. I know about Rebecca and Thomas. I know about everything." She made a sound like I'd punched her in the stomach. Oh, God, Claire!" "Is it Isabelle?" I repeated. "Was that my name, before you took me and made me Claire?" Dad appeared behind her, his face suddenly old and frightened. "Come inside," he said quietly. "Please come inside." I walked into the house I'd grown up in, and it felt like walking into a stranger's home. Everything looked the same: the worn couch, the family photos on the wall, the smell of Mom's lavender candles. But everything was different. Because I was different. Because I wasn't who those photos said I was. We sat in the living room. I sat in the same armchair where I'd opened Christmas presents and done homework and told my parents about my first kiss. They sat on the couch, holding hands, looking at me like I was a bomb about to explode. "Tell me the truth," I said. "All of it." Mom was crying already, tears streaming down her face. Dad cleared his throat and began to speak. "Your mother's name was Rebecca Morrison," he said. "She was Sharon's twin sister, identical twins, just like we told you that you and Emma were." "We were so close," Mom whispered. "Rebecca and I. We did everything together, just like you and Emma did. We married brothers, David and Thomas. We got pregnant at the same time. We gave birth a week apart. Emma came first, and then you, Isabelle, came a week later. We joked that our daughters would be raised like twins, that they'd be as close as we were." "What happened?" I asked, even though I already knew, even though Emma's diary had told me. "Car accident," Dad said, his voice breaking. "You were 2 years old. Thomas was driving. They were coming back from a weekend trip to Boston. A semi-truck ran a red light and hit them head on. Thomas and Rebecca died at the scene." Mom was sobbing now, her whole body shaking. "You were in the car, too, in the back seat. You had minor injuries, some bruises, a small cut on your forehead. But you survived. You were so small, so scared, crying for your mama and daddy, and they were gone, just gone. And you took me," I said numbly. "We were your guardians," Dad said. "Rebecca and Thomas had named us in their will. There was no question about what would happen to you. You came to live with us. You already knew us. You already loved Emma. You'd been calling us Aunt Sharon and Uncle David your whole life. So you just made me your daughter? Pretended I was Emma's twin?" "Not at first," Mom said, wiping her eyes. "At first, we told you the truth, as much as a 2-year-old could understand. We said Mommy and Daddy had gone to heaven, that you were going to live with us now, that Emma was your cousin and we'd take care of you forever." "But you were so traumatized," Dad continued. "You had nightmares every night. You'd wake up screaming for Rebecca. You'd see Sharon and start crying because she looked exactly like your mother but wasn't your mother. It was killing all of us, especially Emma. She was only 2 and she didn't understand why you were so sad." Mom took over, her voice shaking. "And then one day, about 6 months after the accident, you called me Mommy. Not Aunt Sharon, just Mommy. You were playing with Emma and you turned around and said, 'Mommy, can we have a snack?' Like it was the most natural thing in the world. We looked at each other," Dad said, "and we made a decision. Maybe it was the wrong decision. Maybe it was selfish. But we thought, maybe if we let you believe we were your parents, you could heal. You could be happy again. You and Emma already looked so much alike because of the twin genetics. People already mistook you for twins when we went out. It seemed like the universe was giving us a way to make you feel safe again. So you erased Isabelle," I said. My voice sounded hollow. "You erased Rebecca and Thomas. You made me Claire and told me I was Emma's twin, and you let me believe it my whole life. We thought it was for the best," Mom whispered. "We thought we were protecting you. From what? From knowing who I really am? From knowing my own parents? From the pain, she said desperately. From the trauma. You were so young, Claire. Isabelle, you were just a baby. We thought if we gave you a normal childhood, a happy childhood, without all that grief and loss, you could just be a kid, be happy. But Emma knew, I said. You told Emma. They both flinched. When she was 16, Dad admitted, she found some old documents in the attic, birth certificates, adoption papers. She confronted us. We told her everything and made her promise not to tell you. We said it would destroy you, that you'd been Claire for so long that finding out the truth would break you. And she kept that promise, I said bitterly. She kept it until the day she died, the day she decided she couldn't keep it anymore. Mom's head snapped up. What? I opened the diary to the last entry and read it aloud. My voice cracked on every word, but I got through it. When I finished, the silence in the room was deafening. She was coming to tell me that day, I said. The day of the accident. She'd decided she couldn't lie to me anymore. And then she died, and I didn't find out for 6 more months. 6 months of mourning my twin sister, who wasn't even my twin. Oh, Emma, Mom breathed. Oh, my baby girl. She was carrying that burden all those years. We all were, Dad said quietly. We've been carrying it for 22 years. I looked at them. These people who had raised me, who had loved me, who had lied to me my entire life, and I felt something crack open inside my chest. I don't know who I am anymore, I whispered. My whole life is a lie. My name is a lie. My identity is a lie. Everything I thought I knew about myself is gone. Mom reached for me, but I pulled back. Do you have pictures of them? I asked. Of Rebecca and Thomas? Real pictures? Not ones where you've hidden them away? Dad nodded and stood slowly. He went to his study and came back with a photo album I'd never seen before. He handed it to me with shaking hands. I opened it, and there she was. Rebecca, my mother. She looked exactly like Sharon, exactly like my mom, except she wasn't my mom. She was my mother, and she was dead, and I'd never known her. There were pictures of her pregnant, glowing and beautiful. Pictures of her holding a tiny baby, me. Pictures of her with a dark-haired man who must have been Thomas, my father, looking at her like she hung the moon. There were pictures of Emma and me as babies, side by side in matching outfits, looking so identical that even I couldn't tell us apart. But we weren't twins. We were cousins who looked like twins because our mothers had been identical twins. My whole life was right there in those pages. The life I should have had. The life that ended on a highway when I was 2 years old. I need time, I said finally, closing the album. I need time to process this, to figure out who I am now. You're still you, Mom said desperately. You're still our daughter. You're still Claire. You're still the person you've always been. But I'm not, I said, because that person was built on a foundation of lies, and now I have to figure out who Isabelle Bennett would have been, who I was supposed to be before you made me someone else. I stood up, taking the photo album with me. Claire, please, Dad said, don't leave like this. I love you, I said, and I meant it despite everything. But I can't be here right now. I can't look at you and not see the lie. I need space. I walked out of the white colonial house with blue shutters, carrying an album full of pictures of people I should have known, people I should have remembered, people who loved me before they died and left me to become someone else. In my car, I opened the album again and stared at a picture of Rebecca holding baby Isabelle, holding me. She was smiling, her eyes full of love, and she looked exactly like Sharon, exactly like the woman I'd called Mom my whole life. But she wasn't Sharon, she was Rebecca, and she was my mother. I drove back to my apartment as the rain started to fall, the same rain that had been falling the day Emma died, the day she'd planned to give me back my name. The apartment was dark and empty. Emma's things were still in boxes in the corner, waiting to be sorted. Her jasmine perfume still lingered in the air. I sat on the floor and opened the diary again, reading her words. This sister cousin who had known me better than I knew myself, who had carried my secret like a weight on her shoulders, who had decided to set me free and died before she could. "I'm sorry, Emma," I whispered to the empty room. "I'm sorry you had to carry this alone. I'm sorry I never knew. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." But Emma wasn't there to hear me. Emma was gone, and I was left with a name I didn't recognize and a past I couldn't remember and a future that felt like standing on the edge of a bridge with nowhere to go but down. I pulled out my phone and did something I never thought I'd do. I Googled my own name, not Claire Morrison, the other one, Isabelle Catherine Bennett. The search results were sparse. An old obituary for Rebecca and Thomas Bennett, survived by their 2-year-old daughter Isabelle. A few social media profiles that weren't me. A birth announcement from 24 years ago in the Hartford Courant. I clicked on the obituary and read about my parents, about who they'd been before they died. Rebecca Morrison Bennett, age 26, beloved daughter, sister, wife, and mother, passionate artist and dedicated teacher, loved painting, hiking, and spending time with her identical twin sister Sharon and her daughter Isabelle. Thomas William Bennett, age 28, beloved son, brother, husband, and father. Software engineer with a love for photography and classic cars, devoted to his wife Rebecca and his daughter Isabelle. They sounded like good people. They sounded like people I would have loved if I'd been given the chance to know them. I sat there in the dark, holding a diary full of secrets and a photo album full of ghosts, and I felt the last pieces of Claire Morrison crumble away. Who was I now? Was I Claire, the elementary school teacher who loved her twin sister more than anything? Or was I Isabelle, the orphan who'd been remade into someone else's daughter? The answer came to me slowly, like dawn breaking after the longest night. I was both, and I was neither. I was someone in between, someone who had to build herself from scratch using pieces of 2 different lives. Over the next few weeks, I started digging into my past. Real past, Isabelle's past. I found Rebecca's sister, another aunt I didn't know I had, named Jennifer, who lived in Massachusetts. I called her one night, my hands shaking. "Is this Jennifer Morrison?" I asked when she answered. "Yes, who's calling?" "My name is Claire Morrison, but I think I used to be Isabelle Bennett." The silence on the other end of the line stretched so long I thought she'd hung up. "Isabelle?" she finally whispered. "Oh my God, Isabelle, is that really you?" "I just found out," I said, my voice breaking. "I just found out a few weeks ago. Did you know? Did you know Sharon and David raised me as their daughter?" "We knew," she said, and I could hear tears in her voice. "Sharon told us. She said it was better this way, that you were happy, that you'd adjusted. She asked us not to contact you, not to confuse you. She said you'd been through enough. I wanted to fight it, wanted to be part of your life, but my parents, your grandparents, they agreed with Sharon. They thought it was best to let you have a fresh start." "My grandparents?" I repeated. "They're alive?" "Very much alive," Jennifer said, "and they've missed you every single day for 22 years. 2 days later, I was driving to Springfield, Massachusetts to meet people who shared my blood, but not my memory. The house was a small ranch-style home with a garden full of roses. When the door opened, an elderly woman stood there, her hand flying to her mouth. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Rebecca. You look just like Rebecca." "I'm Isabelle," I said softly. "I'm her daughter." She pulled me into her arms and held me so tight I could barely breathe. "My granddaughter," she sobbed. "My beautiful granddaughter. We thought we'd never see you again." Inside, I met my grandfather, my Aunt Jennifer, and her 2 children, cousins I'd never known existed. They pulled out photo albums and home videos, showing me a life I couldn't remember. There I was as a baby, sitting on Rebecca's lap while she painted. There I was as a toddler, laughing while Thomas pushed me on a swing. There I was at my 2nd birthday party wearing a princess dress, surrounded by people who loved me. "You were such a happy baby," my grandmother said, stroking my hair. "Always laughing. Rebecca used to say you were sunshine in human form." What happened after the accident? I asked. Why did you let Sharon and David just take me? My grandfather sighed heavily. We wanted you, sweetheart. We wanted to raise you ourselves, but we were already in our 60s, and Thomas's parents had passed years before. Sharon and David were young. They already had Emma. They could give you stability and a sibling and everything we couldn't, and Rebecca had named them guardians. It's what she wanted. But the adoption, I said. Changing my name, making me think I was their biological daughter. Did you agree to that? No, Jennifer said firmly. We fought against it, but Sharon convinced everyone it was what you needed. She said you were having nightmares, that seeing her face was traumatic because she looked like Rebecca. She said giving you a fresh start would help you heal. Our parents eventually agreed. I never did. Why didn't you fight harder? I asked, and I hated how much I sounded like a hurt child. Because we were grieving too, my grandmother said gently. We'd just lost our daughter. We were broken, and Sharon was so convincing, and she had lawyers, and she was family. We thought maybe she was right. Maybe it was better for you. We didn't realize we were losing you too. By the time we understood what was happening, you were Claire Morrison, and we were strangers. I spent the whole day with them, learning about Rebecca and Thomas, learning about the grandparents and aunt and cousins who had been erased from my life. As the sun set, my grandmother walked me to my car. I'm glad you found us, she said, or that we found you again. I know this must be overwhelming. I don't know who I am anymore, I admitted. I spent 24 years being Claire, Emma's twin sister, and now I find out I'm Isabelle. Orphaned and adopted and lied to my whole life. I don't know which version is real. She took my hand in both of hers. You're both, sweetheart. You're Claire, the woman who was loved and raised well, who became a teacher and a good person. And you're Isabelle, daughter of Rebecca and Thomas, who survived a tragedy and deserves to know her own story. You don't have to choose. You can be both. I drove back to Connecticut with my head spinning and my heart breaking and healing at the same time. When I got home, I did something I'd been avoiding. I went back to the white colonial house with blue shutters. Mom answered the door, her eyes red from crying. She looked like she'd aged 10 years in the past few weeks. Claire, she breathed, you came back. I went to Springfield, I said. I met my grandmother, my real grandmother, and my aunt, and I learned about Rebecca and Thomas. Her face crumpled. I'm so sorry we kept you from them. I'm angry, I said honestly. I'm furious, actually. You stole 22 years from me. 22 years where I could have known them, where I could have had more family, where I could have known my own history. I know, she whispered. I know we were wrong. But I also understand why you did it, I continued. You were scared. You were trying to protect me. You loved me so much you thought erasing my past was the answer. It was wrong, but I understand. Dad appeared behind her, his face hopeful and terrified. I can't forgive you yet, I said. Maybe I never will completely, but I want to try. Because despite everything, you were good parents. You did love me. You raised me well. Emma loved me. That was all real, even if the foundation was built on lies. What do you want? Mom asked. What do you need from us? The truth, I said. All of it. Every detail you've ever hidden. Every memory you've kept from me. I need to know everything about Rebecca and Thomas, about what happened, about why you made the choices you made, and I need you to accept that I'm going to have a relationship with my other family, with the Morrisons and the Bennetts. Of course, Dad said quickly. Whatever you need. And I need you to start calling me by both names, I said. I'm Claire, but I'm also Isabelle, and I need to figure out how to be both. Over the next few months, I slowly stitched my two lives together. I met with Sharon and David regularly, and they told me stories about Rebecca, about what she was like as a child, as a teenager, as a mother. Sharon cried through most of it, mourning her twin sister all over again, mourning the niece she'd turned into a daughter. I spent weekends in Springfield with my grandmother and grandfather looking through old photo albums, watching home videos, learning about the family I'd lost. I took a DNA test and connected with distant relatives on my father Thomas's side. I learned that he'd been an only child, but he had cousins who remembered him fondly and were shocked to learn he'd had a daughter. I legally changed my name, not back to Isabelle Bennett, but to something new, Claire Isabelle Morrison Bennett, a name that honored both lives, both families, both versions of who I was. I went back to teaching in the fall, and my students asked why I had two last names now. Because I have two families, I told them simply. And both of them are important to me. 1 year after finding Emma's diary, I stood at her grave with flowers in my hand. I figured it out, I told the headstone. I figured out who I am. I'm Claire, your sister cousin who loved you more than anything. And I'm Isabelle, daughter of Rebecca and Thomas, who survived when they didn't. I'm both, and I'm okay with that now. I placed the flowers on her grave. Jasmine, her favorite. Thank you for trying to tell me, I whispered. Thank you for wanting to give me the truth, even though it cost you everything. I wish you were here to see who I've become. I think you'd be proud. The wind rustled through the trees, and for just a moment, I swear I could smell jasmine. I turned and walked back to my car, where Sharon was waiting. We'd driven there together. This woman who was both my aunt and my mother, who had loved me enough to lie and now loved me enough to face the truth. Ready? She asked gently. Yeah, I said. Let's go home. And as we drove away from the cemetery, I realized something. Home wasn't a place anymore. It wasn't the white colonial house with blue shutters or my grandmother's ranch in Springfield or my apartment where I'd found Emma's diary. Home was the space I'd created for myself, built from pieces of two different lives, two different families, two different names. I was Claire Isabelle Morrison Bennett, daughter of two mothers, beloved by two families, survivor of one tragedy and heir to two legacies. I was real. I was whole. I was exactly who I was supposed to be. And Emma, wherever she was, could finally rest knowing that the truth she'd died trying to tell me had set me free. Sometimes the most powerful discoveries happen when we least expect them, hidden beneath floorboards and wrapped in silk scarves, written in the careful handwriting of someone who loved us enough to carry our secrets until they became too heavy to hold. I found out I wasn't real. And then I found out I was more real than I'd ever been. What would you do if you discovered your entire identity was built on a loving lie? Would you embrace your true past or hold on to the life you've always known? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about family secrets, identity, and the complicated truth of who we really are. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes we have to lose ourselves to truly find ourselves.